Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is a post inspired by this famous woman who sang to a police officer who was arresting her for no good reason. She's saying, "You are going to lose your job." And I think that is going to be appropriate in more than just the arena of policing, because there are so many places in our society where crud just builds up. Bad methods build up and have to be removed. Everybody knows that police officers have been known to set the guilty free if their skin is white enough. They have also been known to disproportionately arrest and assault innocent Black people, unfairly branding them with the stigma of criminality. It is ridiculous, of course, to make any comparison between the plight of Black people in America and the plight of minority physicists, but I am going to do it anyway because I appreciate absurdity. So here it is. Just like America's cops, physics journal referees discriminate against people who do not fit a certain mold. The mold that they prefer is not so much skin color based, even though only 11 out of 1,200 students at Caltech are of African American descent, and even though the Yale Astronomy Department last hired a Black person 35 years ago, and it was in an administrative role. Rather, the defining characteristics of a physicist are an attraction to elitism, a talent for math, a certain amount of aphantasia or difficulty with visualizing things, and a weak intellectual immune system. I've begun to suspect that the reason that African American people have not been drawn into the physics system, like people from India and Asia and such in the US, is that African American people have a strong intellectual immune system due to a culture of resistance created by a history of betrayal. I think this simply makes them harder to brainwash with overly complex nonsense, because they will instinctively reject it when they see it, rather than repeat and believe stupid thought systems in order to be accepted by a majority group. In short, I think the reason that they have not been incorporated into the physics system is that they have the most important quality of a good scientist: skepticism. This is a key reason why they don't fit well into the physics community and why they are resistant to an infection with its passion for perseveration. Once a fully infected physics debutante flounces into the ballroom assured of his elite status, he will shamelessly spew virtually incomprehensible jargon and be accepted by those who have been similarly indoctrinated. News media outlets will often announce the successful scrambling of his mind with an article about his discovery, and he will gain admission to the ranks of journal referees. They are kind of like the cops of the physics world. If this club rejects you, I think you should actually be flattered, because eventually, maybe after 20 to 50 years, you will figure out that you didn't really want to be a member after all. A system that manufactures people who are deluded into thinking that they are contributing to society when they are really just wasting people's time is not sustainable. My gut tells me that there will be an ideological revolt and that these physics cops are going to lose their jobs, because the students will reject what they have to teach. Their languages have simply degenerated too much to have value, and we have to rebuild those languages so that they are more consistent and sensible. In some sense, this transformation is already happening at the top level of the physics community as journals lose their ability to charge institutions for publications. They can't pay the editors or police chiefs, so in many cases, they've replaced editors and referees with an algorithm that responds to how much readers like a certain type of research. Perfect. Just what the physics community needs, more groupthink enforcement. It is my hope that this community will self-destruct and be replaced by people who have zero tolerance for the sorts of nonsense that has taken root in the past 100 years. They will come to the discipline with a skeptical, fresh perspective, and they will renew the foundations with a simpler, more unified, more well-grounded language that, what I mean by grounded is grounded in intuition and Cartesian space, really. You know the stereotype that Black people are better at dancing and sports? That means that they have good intuition about physics, and that if they are given enough confidence in their thinking abilities, they will be able to identify when someone who lacks intuition is using a coded language to disguise the fact that they are propagating nonsense. These sorts of people might help the physics community get back to making things that are actually useful, instead of trying to measure unmeasurable particles and black holes. I really believe that if the present community doesn't get that sort of reality check, it is headed for a fall. The signs of this fall are clear whenever the news media announces another stupid discovery and the physics community does not cringe or loudly protest. I see this media strategy in non-physics domains as well. For example, the US and Britain are angry at Germany for various reasons. And in the months leading up to some punitive measure, you'll see stories about Nazis or about a German child molester suspected of murdering Madeleine McCann on the front page of their news magazines, preparing the readers with a sense that when Germany is penalized, they deserved it. Now, I know that not everyone believes that the news media promotes predetermined narratives rather than limiting themselves to reporting the news as it happens, but enough people have grown media savvy that this concept has left the domain of conspiracy and become an obvious fact of modern life. That is why when I see lots of media attention given to clownish physics headlines, I think that the community is being set up for a fall. Just this week, several science headlines made me cringe. For example, when a group of physicists announced that they had plugged some stupid numbers into a joke equation and estimated the number of intelligent civilizations in the galaxy, I wondered how many people were feeling ashamed about this headline because it was shameful, embarrassing. Another example is when two explanations for a result would revolutionize physics and a third explanation is absolutely mundane. Why don't all physicists feel shame for believing in the ridiculous explanations? I mean, there was a headline on a story where the physicists were announcing two explanations that would revolutionize physics despite the fact that their results could be explained by something mundane. It was just embarrassing. Another example was when 3 physics thought leaders delivered 3 explanations for gravity in 3 incompatible, ridiculous-sounding languages. I mean, that's a sign that they should be embarrassed of their profession. If those 3 people can't get together and make their language consistent, They should just be fired because they're stupid. Quanta magazine seems to publish tongue-in-cheek, indirect criticisms of the physics community on a regular basis by drawing attention to the most ridiculous publications to hit the mainstream. Those who are not in the know will just see another pop science article cheering for physics, while those who are able to read between the lines will absorb a narrative that is highly critical of present-day research trends. Quanta magazine wasn't what sparked my exit from the physics community, of course, and it won't have any effect on the existing research community because those who are presently doing research will barely have 2 brain cells to spare for anything outside of their specialty. I only escaped from this myopic focus due to personal frustration, which allowed me to see my group's research from a more distanced perspective. Sometimes you need some distance to see the flaws in a project, and once you see the flaws in your own work, you will begin to see the flaws in everyone else's work. It is kind of like a house of cards falling as your hypnotic trance is broken. In short, I decided to exit the physics community because I was ashamed to be a part of it. And since then, I've tried to write up some material that might help the next generation avoid similar shame. To this end, I recently submitted an article to a physics journal that was meant to be read by children, and I thought that would be a good place to present a lesson about the epistemology of physics, astronomy, and of popular experiments like LIGO and the Event Horizon Telescope black hole photography. But I was very rudely rejected for not having a rigorous enough presentation for a journal for children. I wondered, who does this editor think he is? I mean, I have credentials, I've done a postdoc, I have a PhD, but because he was anonymous, I couldn't check out if he was affiliated with LIGO or EHT black hole photography. And then I looked more closely at the journal website and saw that the editors were supposed to be children volunteering, and that these children had been raised on popular science nonsense. So what we had here was a situation in which I, a person with 20 years of professional experience in physics, was rejected by a group of children for not being rigorous enough in my presentation of physics. Wow. This was very similar actually to my experience on Reddit, another place that is moderated by children. It seemed that the editor child objected to seeing his favorite discipline portrayed in a light that didn't make it look stiff, impenetrable, and imposing. After all, those were the qualities that drew him to the field in the first place. Maybe the only way to save the field is to repel these sorts of superfans and draw in a different set of people. I think it might be time for the present-day physics police force to wake up to the reality that they are going to lose their jobs if they don't get rid of the rigorous nonsense crystallized within physics education and popular science. What I'm saying here is not meant to be a threat. I have no power in the physics community or anywhere really. I'm just trying to give those who have extracted their heads from the sands of their academic cults a little bit of warning about where the wind seems to be blowing. Most physicists have no idea that they entered an unsustainably subsidized field. They thought that they were getting a technical education that was as good as, but cheaper than, engineering school, and that they'd be able to carry their skills to new fields like engineering, finance, or data science. Many of them may find shelter in those enclaves, but finance and data science are due for a contraction as well. My personal advice is to anyone who's studied physics is diversify your skills. Learn to do something practical like plumbing or electrical engineering. I would not recommend dealing with your exit from the physics community as I have done, by writing books and blog posts. There are already too many people doing that. But what do I know? I mean, by all means, use writing to support your mental health, but do not use it to prop up your delusions of grandeur. It really isn't healthy. Do not use your hobbies to replace real-life relationships. That is also not healthy. I wish I listened to my own advice. I mean, it's fun creating something, and I know that people who entered physics wanted to create things, and writing is a good way to do that, but I think it's important to go into it with a realistic attitude that nobody's going to pay you for it. And if you want to earn money and support your family, you really need to put your feet back on the ground and do something that your community needs, quite simply. So I encourage you to take a look at the blog post linked below. At the very end of it, I have listed a hall of shame of physics experiments, and links to articles detailing why they are so shameful. And I think it's worth clicking on those links and doing a little bit of reading, especially if you are considering spending any more time studying physics. I mean, the coronavirus has given everyone a chance to sit down and really think about what they're doing. The colleges want you to go back, because if you don't go back, they're bankrupt. But if you go back, you will be bankrupt and maybe get sick. So there's a lot to think about here. I wish you all luck, and I hope you stay tuned for my next video. It's fun making them, and because I feel like I'm able to give advice that I would have liked to have known before I started my physics career. Thank you.